Hi guys, John from Paved in Stone. It's raining again. Wow, who'd have thought it? I reckon it's rained every day for about 9 months now, don't you? Anyway, I'm going to take this quick couple of minutes and talk to you about pricing. So there's always lots of conversation about pricing and all kinds of things, like people wondering how much they should charge per meter or per day or whatever. And obviously, look, the one thing I'll lay out really clear in this video now is I'm not going to give you set numbers, because I think it's really fair to appreciate that everybody's business is different. It's going to be different prices where you are in the country. Everybody runs their businesses slightly differently. Everybody's got different advantages, disadvantages. So what I want to talk about is just a little bit of things that we should be pricing in as part of the job, and then we'll have a little look about what do we think we're worth. So to start off with, when you're pricing a job, and I'm coming from a point of view that you're running a business, okay, so there's obviously variables in that as well. Some of us might be just self-employed, and we turn up, we don't get involved with the supply and the materials and stuff, and we just do our labor. So that's kind of a separate little thing, although we will touch a little bit on that. So I'm thinking more so like you coming in, you're doing the whole supply, tool hire, everything for the client. All right, you're doing the whole lot, so you're running your business. The first thing that we really need to make sure when we're starting to figure out, like, oh, how much do I need to charge a day? Well, the first thing you got to figure out is what your overheads are. All right, so your overheads is your cost to go to work. You've set up a business, maybe you've had to buy a van, so you've got some rental payments or a hire purchase payment, whatever it is. You've got some payments that you've got to pay for your van every week, because that gets you to your jobs, right? That gets you where you're going to go. We stay on the vehicle, you're going to have wear and tear on your vehicle throughout the year. It's got to go in the garage, it's got to have services, it's got to have MOT. Well, that's all got to be paid for, right? Because that's part of your business. You've got also, you've got other allowances in there for your business, so that's your vehicle. What about tools that you've got to buy? Cement mixer, compactor, wheelbarrows, and certain tools, yes, you know, we've obviously we got to look after them all the time, but some tools are like what I would say consumable. They're going to last so long, and you need to buy more. I mean, silly little things that you might not even factor in, like hand saws for cutting wood. I don't know about you guys, but I find a lot of them now, you know, you get a few cuts out of them and the teeth are gone. You've got to go and buy another one. You know, these are consumables that, you know, it's got to be paid for. You've got to have, this is the equipment that, you know, this part of your business is how you run it. Other things that you need to consider in your overhead pricing is things like marketing. How much do you want to spend on marketing? That could be Facebook ads, it could be leaflets, it could be website, you know, all of these things to give you a presence so your customer base can find you. Well, there's cost in that. There's cost for you to have your business. Other things you want to be thinking about, perhaps you might have an accountant that will do things for you, all right? So they'll do your end of year report, maybe they'll do your VAT, they'll do your payroll. So you've got to factor in how much is the accountancy costing you. Again, that's a cost to your business for you, in order for you to run your business. Other things that you're going to have on there is your insurance. So, you know, we should all have our public liability. If you're an employer, you need an employer's insurance as well. So again, that's you know, all these different costs that are affected with your business. You've also got on top of that, I've made a little list, I keep looking down because I forgot some of them. You've also got on there things like stationery. Maybe you put out letter-headed paper, you know, your printer ink, pens and paper, you know, all that sort of stuff that you need to keep your business going. That could be your business cards as well, though arguably that might be marketing. But, you know, all of these little costs that you need to think of. What about the electric? So you sit at home, there's a proportion of your electric that you'll be using, or maybe you've got an office space. You know, you've got to allow for that as well in terms of your overheads. These are costs for you to bring your business to the table. Other things that you've got on there as well is like computing, so you might need to buy, you know, some new computers and whatnot. You also got, if you're an employer, you've got some tax contributions that you've got to make on top of the wage that you're going to pay them. So normally national insurance stuff. You might have pension schemes in there that you need to be paying for as well. You might have an office, you might have a yard, there's a rent on that, you've got to pay for that. And then you've got all your sort of PPE, so all your gloves, your hard hats, your safety goggles, your dust masks, and all of this sort of stuff. You know, so the list goes on and on. It's quite an exhaustive list, but These are your overheads, are the costs for you to bring your business to your client's house. All right, so that's where you start off straight away. So what you do is you work out, either what you got to pay for those per year is normally the way to do it, so per annum, and then you can break that down into months and then weeks and then days, and that will give you a number. And again, for all of us, those numbers are going to be quite a bit different, but that number might be something like 60, 70 quid a day for your business to turn up. All right, so those are your overheads. So before you even start thinking about how much money do I want to walk away with in my pocket, you've got a cost to bring your business to the workplace in the very first instance. So then we can move on. We've got all our overheads, we've got our list, and we've worked it all out. So now we can start thinking about, like, well, how much am I worth? How much is my skill set worth? Now, again, I've made this point so many times. All landscapers are different. We are not all the same. Some of us have got different interests. Some of us have got different skill sets. Some of us prefer to do this, prefer to do that. Some of us can, push that work to a next level. Maybe we're like, award winning and all that sort of stuff. So we work to a higher spec. Some of us are just sort of coming in and just, doing the bread and butter work. So again, your cost of labor in there is going to be dictated by the cost of your skill, the type of projects that you want to be working on. Obviously, the higher up the scale you go, I would argue the more you should be commanding in terms of your daily wage. But again, there's a load of variance in that, where you are in the country and all of that. There's so many variables. So I'm not going to talk about numbers, but what I'm going to say is just consider, when you're pricing, like, how much money do you want to walk away with at the end of the day. Just consider that at the moment, the minimum wage for people 18 to 20 is £8. I got it written there, £8.60 an hour, right? If you're 21 and over, that's £11.40 something, 44 an hour. So straight away you can go, right. So, and no disrespect to people that like work in supermarkets, right? But I would say that would probably be, we could fairly say that's an entry level work. You don't need to be necessarily skilled to go and get an evening job stacking shelves or something like that, or a day job. All right, and I think that's fair, and sorry if that upsets anybody, but it's no way supposed to be disparaging at all. It's just to give us a guideline. So arguably, if I went to go and work for 10 hours a day, stacking shelves, sat on the tills in a supermarket, I'm warm, I'm dry, everything's bought to me, I'm literally just there for my wages. So if I'm on £11.44 an hour, 10-hour day, that's 110 quid plus. All right, so that's where you can start to gauge it from. If you get that from being in somewhere that's warm, that's dry, everything's bought to you, and all you have to do is move it from A to B, you can get 110 quid for that. So you've got to start thinking about, right, well, the challenges in landscaping, it's a hard job, it's really physically hard. You need to have a really good understanding, first and foremost, of ground conditions. That's what a lot of us are working with, different, that's the challenges that we're solving. You've also got loads of skills that go over different ways, so you've got to value yourself accordingly to that. So again, just thinking about that entry level workplace, maybe going into a supermarket, you could get 110 quid a day. So we start to think about all the challenges in landscaping and actually how much more do I think I'm worth. And again, I'm not going to put a number on that. I'll let you guys put the number on that. But that's an important consideration. Just thinking about the skill level that's required. Quite often for a lot of us as well, we might look around. Another way that you could start to gauge, like, how much are you worth a day? How much could you charge a day? Is you might start looking at what some of the guys on site are getting paid. People like ground workers and brickies, probably. That skill level is there or thereabouts. Although I'm sure, again, a lot of us could agree that site work and domestic work are two different animals. But again, we're just trying to gauge, like, what the market is, how much can I charge. I know of and I've heard of like labourers on site, just a general site labourer that perhaps doesn't do a great deal of solving problems or anything like that, not really much skill, and they can get 150 a day now on some building sites around me in the southwest. So again, you're thinking, well, that's entry level construction, it's not terribly skilled at that point. These guys are at the starting rungs. So you can start to gauge, like, okay, how much should I be paying, how much should I be charging, sorry. And then of course, on top of that, once you start to get those numbers, you've got to balance up, actually, is that market around me? We see a lot of people like, oh, I charge 400, 500 pound a day. Great, if you're in an affluent area and you can charge that money and your skill set matches up to it, then of course, you know, that's what you should be charging. But I'd probably say for the majority of us that are working in the domestic market, that kind of money's you know, unattainable for your average domestic client. So you've also got to like try and bear that in mind, where you are, what your costs are in your area. But you start to work out, you know, you can start to have a little look at those numbers and start to formulate where you're at. So then once you've decided, right, this is how much labour money I'd like to be earning, in terms of, and I think this is a really key point. So a lot of us might sit down when we start working out that labour cost, and what we might do is we might sit down and we might go, right, well, my rent is this much, or my mortgage, whatever, my food bill is this much, and we sort of collate all those costs, our personal costs, our home costs, and then we go, oh right, so I need to earn £180 a day. Well, you're working on your minimums right now, so you know, value yourself a little bit more. So that's a key consideration. Don't just base it on like what you need, because if you do that, that's all you're ever going to get is what you need month to month. So just bear that in mind as well. You want to make sure you've got a little bit of room in there, because you're going to get like rain days and delays and things not going to plan and stuff like that. So if you price it to a minimum amount that you can have a day, you're probably going to end up in trouble fairly quickly. So once you've got your idea of what you want to charge for labour, we've already worked out our overheads. Really what we want to be looking at now is during the course of a year, so 52 weeks in a year, how often am I actually working? You know, you might have holiday. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had holiday, but you might have holidays in there. Most of my holidays have been bloody rain days. You get days of poor weather. You'll get days where out of your control, third parties you know, have let you down. You can't do anything more today. So actually, when you look at it, I mean, 52 weeks in a year, I would say that once you've started to collate all your costs and you want to work out what your average is per day, probably it's sensible if you look at maybe 48 weeks in a year. If you work everything out on that, then that gives you a little bit of scope. And if you end up working 50, 51, 52 weeks a year, then you know that actually, you know, that last 4 weeks, if you like, if we're talking business, and maybe that's profit, or whatever, you know, that's like next year's holiday or whatever. So just bear that in mind. You're not going to be working every day, Monday to Friday, every month, every year. It just doesn't go like that. And certainly, again, bloody rain's coming in again. We've all seen that. Right? I guess we've all lost quite a bit of time over the last few months. So bear that in mind as well. So now you should have a good idea of like, right, I'm going to cost, by the time I've got my overheads in there, time I've got my little bit of labour money in there, just pull a number out, it's 250 quid a day, right? That's the cost for my wage and my business to turn up a day, right? So now you can start to work it out. Some of you, as I know, you might price it by the metre, in which case you're going to have to tweak your sums a little bit more. I don't price by the metre, so I don't really have a lot of input on that, I'm afraid, guys. So if that's the way you do it, certainly the things that I've talked about there are good guidance for you, but quite how you're going to convert that into a metre rate, you know, leave that to you guys. And the last thing I want to just talk about in terms of pricing, so let's say you know, we've gone to survey a job, we've done our survey, we've gone and done our quote. When we're doing our quote, really important, and I feel like a lot of us miss this, is your initial setup cost of the job, of the project. Okay, so day one, and it depends on the size of the projects, I get that, but there are such things as preliminary costs. All right, these are the costs to set up the job. So that might be, for instance, we're on a job at the moment, so we've got, as part of our compliances, we've got our signboard out, which has got the name of our company on it. It's got our health and safety information on it, and you know, be careful, building works and all that sort of stuff to be compliant. And we've got some barriers where we can kind of close that off from our customers and any member of the general public coming into a site that we're trying to control. There's a cost to that. I've had to pay for that board. I've had to make that board up. You know, there's a cost to the barriers. Quite a lot of the times we're getting stuff delivered onto people's driveways where you're going to want tarpaulins, you're going to want some boards or ground sheets or something. There's a cost to that. There's a cost to like getting them here onto the job, putting them down. Staff welfare, so you might have a toilet. You know, these are all costs that are regardless of the job. So regardless if you're laying 50 meters, I've still got to have that toilet. I've still got to have those boards. I've still got to have this. I've still got to have that. So these are your preliminary costs, which will not change during the course of the project. Some costs that might change during the course of your project. The customer might have a 60-metre patio and they've asked for it to be 50. Okay, so you're obviously going to adjust by 10 metres there, but your preliminary costs, they won't change. Now, quite how you present that to the customer is entirely up to you, and I will do another video about some examples of how you can present your costs to your customer. But I hope that's a little bit insightful on the costs of running a landscape business. And as I said, look, there's going to be a massive variance between what some people are charging, what other people are charging. But I think the key is there for me is you've got your overheads, and then you've also got to identify like what kind of market you either want or you tend to get more calls of. So maybe you get like a lot of calls for 25-30 metre square jobs, and you've got to balance that up as well. What is my market? What can I charge? What should I charge? And what do you want out of it? Again, some of us might want to do like more high-end skillful work that's more challenging. Some of us might be quite happy going in and banging out a 25-30 metre patio every week. It's horses for courses. Not all landscapers are the same, but I hope that helps. Sorry, it's a bit of a long one, but there's a lot to talk about, and there's probably a lot of stuff there that I've not covered. So if there's anything else that I've not covered in there, leave us a comment, leave us a question. Let us know what you think about it. Let's share this information, and it's all got to be part of a good thing for making sure that we're all on the same page. Don't forget, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Cheers.